after a close, kind of scary win for the Washington Commanders over the Saints, who were just playing for their playoff lives. This felt like an elimination game in March Madness, didn't it? You know, you have a team that's clearly better, that gets out to a big lead, that dominates the first half, and then there's the team from the Ivy League that just keeps scrapping and clawing and scrapping and clawing, and they almost find a way. They have a chance to hit a three-pointer at the buzzer to win, and they can't get it done, and that's what felt like happened in this game. But I'm here to tell you why this game was not as close as it seemed and why the Commanders have put themselves in great position. Some of this is just a young team learning, and I would much rather this young team learn on the fly in the regular season than have to figure out these hard lessons in the playoffs. And the good news, they still got to win even though they made some mistakes. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the addition of Marshon Lattimore and what he did for this team. We're going to talk about your playoff chances and playoff predictor, all that kind of stuff. My favorite website as of recently, as things move and shake and groove every single week in the playoffs and positioning for it. But before we do that, let me tell you about this channel. If you're new to it, we're Lions fans, but because we're Lions fans, we know what it's like throughout the years to be kind of ignored by the national media. We love covering teams that we feel like are that. And in the NFC North, you feel like the Commanders are this team that has such a good, loyal fan base, such a strong following, but the national media refuses to care about them as much as they care about the Cowboys or the Eagles or even the lowly garbage Giants, right? So we don't cover the Cowboys. In fact, when I looked up Commanders news, half the time I look it up, half the articles somehow have the Cowboys. It makes no sense to me. So we wanted to give a fair shake to the Commanders. We also just thought Jane Daniels was a great draft pick, and this would be a fun team to watch. So we've been covering the Commanders for about a year now and having a really good time doing that. So let's talk about the good first in this, and then why even in the bad it's good news. So first is the good, and that's Marshon Lattimore erased one side of the field. And he didn't erase one side of the field by being dominant, by getting an interception, or by deflecting passes. He erased one side of the field because he was not targeted one time. All right, obviously this means he did not allow a reception against the Saints in his debut against his former team. All right, yes, I get it. And in this article says the same thing. It says, like, yeah, it's a couple of struggling young quarterbacks. We get it. All right. But they still limited their offense extremely because with those young quarterbacks, they refused to allow him or allow them to throw the ball to his side of the field. When you have a defense that recognizes that a team is only going to one side of the field and they're completely staying away from Marshon Lattimore, it allows you to be so much more creative in what you do. It allows you to send a blitz from that side of the field almost as much as you want, knowing that the quarterback's just not going to throw it over there in Lattimore's direction. It's fantastic. You can eliminate the other team's best receiver. Like, you can do a lot of these things. In his response, he said, I didn't really get too much action, but just to be out there was a great feeling. You know what? Not a lot of words, more along just, hey, it's good. And then when you put him alongside Mikey Sainris still, my boy, all right, you can tell I'm a Michigan fan. You got Harbaugh here. You got the Nico Collins jersey. Hey, from Michigan, love U of M, right? Like, Mikey Sainris still is balling out. He is a good player. But it wasn't all perfect news for the Commanders. So let's talk about some of the things that they have to figure out and missed opportunities that they had that could have, this should have been a 30-10 game. Like, that's just where this should have been, or even a 30-20. That's fine. Yeah, it's exciting seeing a failed 2-point conversion from the Saints to seal the win. All right, but there's stuff on the way that could have been cleaned up. Jaden Daniels was amazing, especially in the first half. He was very good throughout this game, but as we've seen throughout this year, in some games, the points pile up, and in other games, they just don't. And that could be a missed fourth down conversion. That could be settling for too many field goals. That could be drives that seemingly are going well. There's something that all the cards line up, but then it just slips through the fingers. And that happened in this one. I mean, Terry McLaurin was wide open for what could have been touchdowns on 3 separate occasions, right? You saw it. You know what I'm talking about. All in the second half. And all 3 ended up with the ball slipping through his grasp, right? These are the small things that this team knows that they have to take care of. This is why when you have a great coach like you now do, and you're talking about taking it one game at a time, you can learn about this as you go in next week against Philly. All right? But also, this had all the makings of a trap game. Like, you play the Saints, who have been playing actually decent as of late, all right, trying to make their final push to say, hey, we can be a playoff team. Let's just win out, right? They're done now. But, like, not mathematically, I don't think, but they are done. And so, like, and it's right before you have a big showdown against Philly. And the last time you played Philly was in November. It did not go well. And so, like, you want to prove, like, no, we're legit. We are for real. And by the way, us as Detroit Lions fans would love it if you would beat Philly next week. All right? I would love it just to watch it. All right? But also, we would love it if you beat Philly, because that helps us get the number 1 seed. And we have a lot of injuries, so help a brother out. But anyways, with all of that being said, even with all this happening, even with Greg Joseph missing a field goal, right? Wide right? All those things, you still win the game. And that's what actually matters. And you continue to have a hold on the final spot in the playoffs. A final spot in the playoffs, which, by the way, if the playoffs started now, would put you against the Eagles in the first round. Like, I mean, it's just the Eagles, all right? It seems like they are the team that is standing in your way. They are the team that you need to beat in order to get in. But with that being said, and this is my favorite site over the last couple weeks, this is a playoff standings predictor. All right. And right now, you have a less than 1% chance to get either the 2 or the 5 seed. You have a 16% chance to catch up to the Packers, and then a 57% chance to stay exactly where you are right now. Let me zoom in on this so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. This is what we're talking about. This is your team right here, the 57%. Then you have a 20% chance to miss the playoffs. All right. The team that's rolling behind you, all right, is there's a couple teams. It's the Seahawks, the Falcons, and the Cardinals. Here's what I love about this. The Seahawks, if you want to look at their closing schedule, they have to play Minnesota, who is red hot. All right. I would make the argument that behind Buffalo, maybe, and even Buffalo, it's just one game, right? I would argue that Minnesota is actually the hottest team in the NFL. They have like a 6 or 7 game winning streak going on right now. They're going into Seattle. Seattle just got humbled by the Green Bay Packers. Then they have to go to Chicago, which is never easy to travel across the country into the cold, right? And then they have to finish out the season at LA, which is another team that's getting hot at the right time. That's a difficult 3-game stretch. All 3 of those games, I would say that Minnesota's favored in this one. LA will be favored, and then Chicago is more of that toss-up type thing. You're looking at a 1-2 type situation coming off of that with a team that's already a game behind you. All right? Your record, however, you have the Philly game. Philly will be favored. I hate to say that, but they will. And then you go and you get to play Atlanta at home, right? That is beautiful because you can just knock them out. They're already 2 games behind you, or a game and a half, I guess it is, behind you. No, you're 9-5. They're 2 games behind you, right? So they're 2 games behind you. Just knock them out and then go to Dallas and beat them. Like, I talked to you, and how sweet is that, right? Like, how sweet is that? Even if you lose to Philly, you win the next 2 games, you're in the playoffs. Like, that's what's going to happen. At least that's the way that I see it playing out. And you can have the Rams and, like, who are in the playoffs, even though they have a worse record than you right now. Like, that is the interesting way that this works. The Buccaneers are in the playoffs, even though they have a worse record than you. So, like, the Bucs and the Falcons, like, you just have to make sure you're ahead of one of those teams. The Rams and the Seahawks, you just have to make sure you're ahead of one of those teams. The Cardinals, and I'm sorry, it's actually the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals. You just have to make sure you're ahead of one of those teams. So anyways, really good chances for playoffs. We know that. But I also think this is a young team that's learning now. What an awesome experience. If the Commanders aren't ready to win a Super Bowl this year, which I think they could be, I really do, especially with the addition of Lattimore, this is a team that absolutely will be ready next year. So this is great experience as we get down into the playoffs, a team that can learn and a team that has a future stacked ahead of them. All right, hey, thanks for watching. For more content, please hit that subscribe button. We'll see you on the next one.